My dear friends, I'm jumping into the morning reflections today, and today I'm just jumping into something that is a bit, has been happening around on the news. If you have been following things on social media, and I thought it's something that I'd like to approach from a different angle. There's an issue about they're calling it the slap that was had around the world. I've been having discussions, people asking and saying that if you're told you're trying to protect your loved one, or trying to protect your spouse, how far do you go? How far do you go, and what are the limits of this? But today I'm going to approach it from a part of a husband protecting his wife, because the primary need of any woman, of course, I said, is security. So I'm talking about protecting your wife, because I'm just based on the incident that happened, this past week, and what you're calling the slap that was had across the world. The argument was this man protecting his wife, and did he go too far? And the other argument was that if at all he was really protecting the wife behind the scenes, then he would have approached it differently. But the overreaction is evidence that there was no protection behind the scenes. That is a debate for another day. But it provoked my reflection this morning, because I thought that's something good to talk about and to see what can be done. So there are three main ways that a man can protect his wife, and I want to explain them bit by bit. There are three ways, and among these three ways, there are about 4 or 5 things within these three ways. Number one way that a man protects his wife is physically. A man protects his wife physically. This is the most tangible type of protection that a husband can give his wife. And many men incidentally don't actually reach this threshold. However, you must be conscious of a few things when you're taking up this responsibility. Number one, provision is key. Provision is key. Protecting your wife as a husband, provision is important. You cannot undermine the role of provision. You cannot sit and say that I'm protecting her and I'm not providing. I have to find a way of providing, no matter how small. I had an argument in my office where there's a lady who was arguing with the husband before me, and she's telling the guy that, I know I earn more than you do, but can you at least provide something small? Pay for electricity, do something small, pull a little bit of weight. Don't just sit there and wait for me to respond. Don't just sit there and wait for me to do something. Do something. Second thing, my dear friends, you must look at is that you have to be able to give open and clear compliments. You have to be able to give open and clear compliments. This in itself, my dear friends, also speaks protection. Because as a man, if you're protecting your wife and you cannot be able to speak openly about you can't openly and constantly compliment her, it means that you are insecure about yourself and you are intimidated by her. Something else you must look at as well now is defending her from a physical threat. What do I mean by a physical threat? I mean, if someone attacks your spouse physically, then automatically you are duty bound to respond. Someone can't attack your spouse physically and you start meditating about it. That does not work, You have to find a way whereby I'm actually going to fight, and I'm going to, because it's a physical threat, I will respond physically. You don't respond to a physical threat through meditation. And the next one you must look at is you have to defend her honor. You have to defend her honor. And this is where again it becomes tricky, because whenever someone is attacking the honor of your spouse and you sit back as a man, and maybe it is your mother, it is your sister, it is a workmate, it is a neighbor who is going for her honor, and you're sitting back as a man, then you're not protecting your wife. Number 2, I want to move to the second, which is emotional protection. If you can confidently, as a husband, look at the emotional situation of your wife, and look at her emotional codes and emotional tones, and what is sensitive and what is not. This gives you a bit of leverage on how you are able to protect her emotionally. Again, I go back to this. If you protect her emotionally, and you protect her emotionally privately, then automatically, publicly, you will already covered your base. And it's easier for you to be reasonable in public. I want to look at a few things here. Number 1 is that you don't verbally abuse your wife. As a husband, you don't verbally abuse your wife. I just finished my first class of Rite of Passage this past weekend, and a discussion that I was having with some of the dads was very interesting. When I was telling them that we don't abuse the mother of your children, and they're telling me, Victor, I have never actually known about this. At times I get out and I just say what I want to say. You don't verbally abuse your spouse. Number two, you don't allow anyone else, including your own mother, to abuse your spouse. You don't allow anyone else, including your own mother, to do it. If I'm not doing it, then no one else can do it. There's a lady, married a very prominent man. She came to my office, and she was telling me that the husband has insulted her so many times when he got into a prominent office. He insulted her so many times, abused her so many times verbally in front of her son. But when the son was turning 13, the boy began repeating the insults that the father was giving the mom to the mother. And now she was lost. And now the dad and the son would come together and agree, and they join forces to insult her. That is madness of the highest order. Number three, you don't abandon your wife emotionally, because this leaves her exposed and vulnerable. You don't abandon your wife emotionally. That is not part of protecting her. If you abandon her emotionally and you leave her exposed and vulnerable, then she'll always make a decision based on her vulnerability. And you'll always find yourself overreacting in moments when you're being pushed, maybe to protect her or to stand up for her. The next one is this, under emotional protection, is let her know that her tears are safe with you. Let her know that her tears are safe with you. This one is where now many people also fail, is understanding that feelings are valid. There are no bad feelings. All feelings and emotions are valid. They might be trivial to me, but they're important to you. And therefore, as a husband, I have a responsibility to ensure that no matter how trivial I think they are, that they are necessary and they're important to my partner, and I'll take them seriously. The next one is be available even when it hurts you to do so, or even though it makes you uncomfortable. You be available even if it hurts you to do so or makes you uncomfortable. That is emotional protection. And the sixth thing in emotional protection is always keep your promises. I always have a problem with promissory notes. In parenting, in marriage, not being a person who keeps promises, that is a crime. You'd rather keep quiet than ever make a promise you can't keep. And the last thing, which is important, my dear friends, is protecting your wife spiritually. This is very important. In Genesis, the Lord tells the man to cultivate, to grow, to make it better. As a man, cultivate your own personal relationship with God. That is important. But you may be a pillar in your family. As a man, have your own relationship with God. First of all, not your wife's relationship, your own relationship with God. This is important because it's good for a few things. One, how do you protect your wife spiritually? First things first is she must know that one way or another, you believe in God. On the bare minimum. You might not be a person who goes for retreats or novenas. You might not be the person who goes for keshas or prays in tongues, who stands on top of mountains and shouts. But let her know that you believe in God. That's important. On the bare minimum, you can meet at God. Number two, you involve her in spiritual matters. Number three, blessing her. I always talk about blessing every time. I talk about that a father blesses, a husband blesses, a man is a blessing carrier. You bless your wife, you bless her children. That is important. Now, I've mentioned these three things in this very broad parts. There will be some people asking me right now, asking questions, thinking that, Victor, what happens if at all maybe my spouse does not protect me, or maybe I'm doing these things, I'm protecting my spouse, but also as a husband, I do need protection. And it is true that also a husband needs protection, and that's and we cannot eliminate that a husband in himself needs protection also. But what do you protect a husband from? One, you protect him from, again, you protect him from his own weaknesses. Because as a wife, you are aware of the weakness that your husband has. Protect your husband from his own weaknesses. You anticipate his weaknesses and you protect him from them. Number two, you protect him from the influence and you protect him from external influence that is negative to his well-being as a man. How do you do that as a wife? I go back to something I've said 3 or 4 shows ago, that be his friend. Be his friend. By being his friend, you gain his ear. If you're not his friend, you don't gain his ear. Very important. Number 3, you protect his ego. You protect his ego. Meaning that you don't ridicule your husband in public or in private. You don't make his mistakes bigger than he is. That is a mistake in most marriages, where we make our spouses, many wives make their husbands' mistakes bigger than their husbands are. Protect his ego. You're the protector of his ego. Number 4, cover his mistakes. To the best of your ability, cover his mistakes. Because he will make mistakes. To the best of your ability, cover his mistakes. And number 5, you protect your husband as a wife by interceding for your husband. He blesses you, but you intercede for him. Now, I've given both sides of this because I'm looking at how to protect your spouse. And at times, if you do these things behind the scenes, then when you're in a situation that is high tension and high pressure, you don't overreact. You'll have the wisdom in the situation to handle and manage the situation. But if you don't do that in private, then in public you'll be pushed to do something you never do. And that, my dear friends, is not protection. That is an overreaction.